Hello everyone, welcome to the Redmen TV. It is the deep dive. I'm Chris Pajak, that is Josh Williams. We are here to talk about Dean Huijsen, Bournemouth centre half. He is breaking the Liverpool internet right now, and he's breaking it for a couple of reasons. First off, Fabrizio Romano said a day or so ago, I'm hearing that internally at Real Madrid, no, wrong one, sorry mate, they've still not decided whether they want to sign a centre-back or not in the summer, or how much they want to spend. They have Raul Asensio at the club who's doing very well, so that's why Real Madrid are not so convinced, not about Huijsen, but about signing a centre-back in the summer. This is why the timing is helping out the English clubs. So Liverpool will be there, Arsenal will be there, Chelsea will be there. Chiesa, there's me. The release clause is 50 million, so the negotiation is on the players' side. Basically, I'm sure that all these three clubs will push again in the next few days and weeks to reach an agreement with his camp. And then today, Josh, David Lynch has come out, and this is on my screen, Joe, and said the biggest spanner in the works could be Real Madrid, and by all accounts they would be the players' preference, because obviously he represents Spain and would love to play for Real Madrid, but it doesn't seem at the moment they're likely to follow up on their interest. That could leave Liverpool with a bit of a free run, and I think there's no doubt that if they do get that, Dean Huijsen would be a very smart signing. From everyone you speak to, this is something that's going to be resolved quite early in the window, so maybe we won't have to wait too long to find out if he's going to be a Liverpool player, but he is a very interesting potential target. Nice.
Yeah, definitely. I'm in favour of it. I like it when we get linked with a good player.
What is it you like about Dean Huijsen?
There's a lot of things I like about him, actually. I think, for a start, he's acquitted himself really well in the Premier League, despite turning 20 years old 8 days ago.
Yeah.
So he's essentially, what we've seen of him as being a teenager playing in the Premier League for a team that are really aggressive and proactive and demanding and all that sort of thing. So he's coped really well for that, which I think is a good foundation, good starting base almost to come and then play for Liverpool when you got Van Dijk next to you and you're still playing really aggressive and you're playing in the same league but you're surrounded by better teammates. So I think what we've seen of him this season has been really good. I also really like, what I'm like, he's very two-footed.
Yeah.
Which is...
Favours is right, but very two-footed.
Yeah, but he's very, very two-footed. He's one of them few players who, if you check him on Transfermarkt and go on his profile,
it says both.
It says both when it says preferred foot. That's why some people think he's left-footed, because he plays on the left sometimes for Bournemouth, but he's not. He is right-footed. But because he's two-footed, he can play both sides. So he could in theory cover Virgil, he could in theory cover Canate. That's a gem. So, Spanish international as well, I think.
Yeah, he is. He played against Holland.
Yeah, he's...
And a 90% pass completion when he played for Spain, which you would kind of expect. His season average for Bournemouth is 84%, and that is the highest of anybody who's played like quite a few minutes. Basically, I think anyone who's played above 10 games, that's the highest sort of pass completion rate in Bournemouth squad as well.
Yeah, I think he's about 6'3"-ish.
6'6", I read.
Is he?
He's a monster, mate.
I didn't know that.
He's a monster,
That's
mate.
interesting.
What's it say there on FB Ref? I can see it up on your screen there.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't for some reason.
I read a piece on him and said it was 6 foot. He's 6'6", and then what was really interesting about it?
6'5" on Google.
Okay, so like when you see him stood on the pitch next to other players, he looks massive, but he's a baby face, isn't he? And he's quite sort of lithe and a bit skinny, and he doesn't look like he'd be strong, but he's decent in the air. Before we get into Dean Huijsen a little bit too much and we look at some of the statistics and everything around him, I just want to talk briefly about the other options at centre-half that we've currently got.
At the club?
At the club, yeah. Now, you may or may not know we still own Nat Phillips. His contract runs out this summer. So it's unlikely to be renewed. Konate's 25 years old as it stands. He's 26 in May, so he'll be 26 at the start of next season. His contract runs out in 2026. That's an interesting piece of business, I think, for Richard Hughes to deal with. Van Dijk, as we know, has just signed a 2-year deal, so that runs out in 2027. He's 33. He'll be 34 at the start of next season. The other option's Joe Gomez, who's 27 now, but he'll be 28 at the start of next season. And Kwanzaa, his contract runs out in 2029. He's currently 22 and he'll be 23 next January. So he's a young 22 years old at the moment. I think, well, actually, no. What do you think about those options and who can you see still being there next season?
It's a good question. I think it's very important that we've tied Virgil down, first and foremost. I think it's interesting that we don't have a left footer in there. Van Dijk has always played on the left, but favours his right. So I've always felt that's a bit of a void that I'd like us to deal with. Whether Huijsen tackles that, I mean, would you say he does? I mean, he's right-footed, obviously, but because he's so two-footed, I suppose you could technically view that as Liverpool have signed a left footer in a weird sort of way. I think Gomez, I know people kind of like having him around and things like that, and he's got that utility element to his game. He can play fullback areas and things like that, homegrown. But I am of the position that you'd probably just sell Gomez now. I think that's generally what you should be doing with these players who've been around for a long time, still got a market value, not getting many minutes. I know he's been injured, but that's another thing.
That's it.
Exactly, yeah, that comes into it. So I would be interested in the sale there with Gomez. Konate I would obviously keep, and the suggestions that he wants 200 grand, I would do. I think if we don't keep him, it would be a case of him getting attracted to Paris or Madrid, which would be annoying. But he's a player I'd obviously take to keep. I don't know if that's doable or not. I think Kwanzaa's the interesting one. I do think he's had a bad season. I think he's made a fair few mistakes. He's now resorting to playing right back, and he doesn't look good when he plays there. And yeah, maybe took a bit of a backward step this season. And you just mentioned that he's 22. Huijsen, he was the level. He has just turned 20, and he looks a fair bit ahead of him to me. That's the standard that you're talking about when you're talking about Liverpool. Like, so, yeah. Apart from Virgil, I'm kind of on the fence with them all. Not so much with Konate, but I kind of am, because you don't know if he's staying or not. So it's definitely an area that we can invest in, put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the Joe Gomez injury stuff. I mean, this season alone, I'm looking at it on Transfer Market. He had a hamstring injury in December for 41 days, missed 11 games. He's had another hamstring injury from February the 3rd. He's missed the last 84 days, and that's another 15 games. So he's missed 26 games so far for Liverpool this season. We know, actually last season I was quite surprised he missed one game with the virus. I was a little bit shocked at that, but then prior to that, I mean, we've had cruciate ligament tears, tendon issues, all kinds of things, haven't we, with Joe? And it's just been difficult for him. He's our longest serving player, isn't he? You know, he's been there since 2015 since we bought him from Charlton and stuff. In terms of Konate, I thought it interesting to look at his injury stuff as well, because it's always talked about. He's actually missed 8 games. He missed 34 days, the end of November till the 31st of December with a knee issue. Then he missed 8 games last season, 29 games the year before. For various different things. So he's had his issues as well. But I think this season for me has kind of felt like probably maybe his best season in Liverpool share, Konate. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I agree. And you know, I think the thing with Konate is when you're looking at the wage and all that stuff. Yes, he gets injured, but when he's actually on the pitch, which this season has been reasonably often, you know, how many centre backs realistically can you name in Europe that are better than Konate? Like, honestly, think about it now. Van Dijk. There's a question
Oh,
mark.
I really think the Arsenal lads are very, very good.
Oh, yeah.
And I really like them.
Unattainable. Saliba's brilliant. But honestly, there's genuinely times where Konate looks better than Saliba. Because Konate can do the aerial side. Saliba's brilliant on the ground. But not so good in the air. I think Konate starts ahead of him, doesn't he, for France? I think. Mm-hmm. So if someone wants to throw Saliba at me, sound, I wouldn't debate it. But it's not like if you asked 100 people, who would you take to face a team of aliens who are going to invade the Earth? Konate or Saliba to start? I reckon a lot of people would pick Konate over Saliba. Don't get me wrong, there's some really good centre halves out there, but Bastoni's brilliant. But what I'm getting at is,
there ain't many.
You've got like a top 5 in the world centre half there. So you want to keep him, obviously, despite the slight niggles and things like that.
Okay, all right. I think the Kwanzaa stuff's interesting. Obviously, we got no concerns over Van Dijk. His ever-presentness is a thing as well. Yeah. The age thing is probably like the question mark of, are you starting to plan for the future a little bit? And I think when you think about Huijsen, that feels like a very good planning for the future because, as you said, he could cover both sides. You know, as an example, in Bournemouth's last 2 games, in their last game, the 0-0 draw, he started on the left. In the game prior, he started on the right.
Yeah.
So, and I think he has, for the majority of the season, started on the left, but he has also still played from that right-hand side of the centre-back pairing as well. So that bodes well for Liverpool because you can cover both positions with one guy.
Exactly.
And it also means that, like, you're not throwing someone... Let's say you're playing cup games next season and Konate and Van Dijk are the established pairing. Huijsen can play the left in the cup games, which we've never really had someone who's ready to play the left-hand side, have we? We've always thrown Gomez there, who's always been a right-sided centre-back, or we've seen Jarell Quansah there, actually, last season as a left-sided centre-back. Konate's been moved there, Matip's been moved there, but they've never been comfortable there, have they? So you could have games for him. Equally, if Konate gets injured, you could put Huijsen in at right centre-half and you'd have absolutely no issues whatsoever. Quansah, I think you're right, is the interesting one. I make you 100% right with everything you said about him. I think he has taken a step backwards. I don't think it's been helped by being played on the right back either. I think that's unfairly put him up for extra criticism when I don't think he'd started the season particularly well at centre half, to then ask a lad to go and sit on an island at right back when he's clearly not a right back has been a little bit harsh in my opinion.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say on that is Konate's poor start to the season stemmed from almost lapses in concentration where he loses focus a little bit, or he plays a pass blind or something like that. And the problem with having a centre-half like that is if a centre-half makes a mistake like that, you face a shot immediately because he's the last line of your defence. So the way in which to get Quansah on the pitch without giving him ultimate responsibility is by playing him as a right back. I think Klopp got to this point with Gomez. Joe Gomez suffered from a loss of confidence, I think, because when Van Dijk got injured badly, Gomez got injured badly as well. Whereas Van Dijk was reintegrated perfectly. When Gomez was reintegrated, Konate was stood there, and he was the new guy, and Gomez didn't really get minutes until the following season. So I think Gomez lost confidence, made a few of those massive errors, so Klopp starts using him here. Start using him as a 6 at one point. Start using him as a left back, inverted. So I think that's the thing. That's why Quansah's now getting used away from centre half, because your centre half has to be bulletproof. He has to be that kind. What's the? I seen it the other day. Oh, there's like a little word that I saw, like a gene that a player's got, but like a Lovren gene. Do you know what I mean? Where he can put in 5 storms, but the 6th, he'll fall over his own foot and Alisson faces a 1v1. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Quansah's shown that he might have a little bit of that in him, which is why you move him away from centre-half. And then you move him away from centre-half and he struggles. So I think that's the story behind that one. Yeah,
but do you think he would have been played at right back if it weren't for Bradley and Trent both being injured?
But that's probably what's happened. But I think there was a point when he was playing right back with Gomez centre back. I think Slot kept Gomez centre back and put Kwanzaa right back because he felt like Gomez was a bit more of a sure bet. He won't shoot himself in the foot. Klopp thought the opposite at the back end of his tenure. Kwanzaa was playing there, Gomez was playing there or over there. Slot is so different. He's witnessed a few Kwanzaa errors, so he thinks get him away from the centre half then. Put Gomez there.
Is Kwanzaa still a project for you moving forwards, or do you have concerns over him yourself? And secondary question to that, I suppose, do you think Slot is so ruthless that he might just go?
Yeah,
try mate.
Difficult that one. I think.
Start with your opinions then.
I think I'm a little bit concerned about him because the big thing with a centre half, obviously you're going to make mistakes and things like that. You don't Liverpool don't typically sign a centre half until he's experiencing his peak or something. We're experiencing before that because he's come through the academy, so that some of that's normal. I think when you think about raw materials, he's a really good size. You know, he's got that physical edge about him. But first game of the season, he gets essentially bullied by Liam Delap. And he's not particularly quick. What would you say he's like on the ball?
Okay.
Yeah, I'd probably say the same. I'd probably say he's ordinary. I don't think his like line-breaking passes is especially brilliant. I think he's got some of Matip in him with the ball carrying.
Yeah.
But sometimes he goes into dead ends a little bit. Maybe he'll get that over time. From set pieces at both ends, I'd say he's probably just ordinary. Maybe. I mean, he's got height on his side definitely, but his aerial ability doesn't feel like it's, you know, Van Dijk or Kanate or anything like that. Yeah, so he's in the 65th percentile for aerial success, which is because he wins. See, since he came on the scene for Liverpool in the Premier League only, so that's this season and last season, he's won 62.5% of his duels. He's had 80 duels, 150, lost 30. It's not bad, but it's not. Van Dijk's Liverpool career is 75%, or just over 75% in the
What did you say his aerials was then? 66, did you say?
62.5.
62. Well, Huijsen's is 77 this season.
That's interesting. You sure?
Oh, sorry, 77 percentile.
Right.
Yours, you said 62 percentile, didn't you? I was matching that.
Yeah, I'm talking about win percentage.
But I'm talking aerial duels, and you were talking before, weren't you? You were talking percentile, weren't you, before?
Yeah, I mentioned this percentile.
Yeah. So Huijsen is the 70th percentile, so it's better.
Right,
I've got the stats actually for Huijsen in a little bit, and we'll move on to that now actually, because it's an everything you need to know about Dean Huijsen video. So I prepared a little bit of something where I just got a few details for everybody and stuff like that. So he was signed from Juventus. Sorry, it's not on the screen, mate. My bad. Huijsen, it's not really, it was Joe's, but anyway. Huijsen was signed from Juve for initial 12.8 million, rising to 15.3 million in the summer. He only broke into the team when Marcos Senesi got a hamstring injury. He just turned 20 on the 14th of April. 6'5", 6'6" tall, skinny frame, baby face. Is strong though. His aerial win percentage is 59.8% this season, which is actually better than Arsenal's Gabriel. Did you know that?
59.8%.
59.8%.
That's awful.
It's nowhere near as good as some of the others.
Yeah, it's not good.
But Gabriel is 58.9%. Best pass completion rate in Bournemouth squad I mentioned before, but he's not just a safe passer. He ranks third in the Premier League over 1,500 minutes for progressive passes which start in the attacking 2/3 of the pitch and move the ball at least 25% closer to the goal. Both footed, as we've mentioned, plays on the left and the right. Now, I found a really interesting sort of an analytical article. Here's where those in the progressive passes sort of come from. You can see this from Opta Analyst. So you can see his starting position is the left-hand side there, can't you, Josh, because of where they're all coming from.
Yeah.
But these are a fair amount of good progressive passes. I say third most in the league in the attacking 2/3 for anyone over 1,500 minutes in the league so far. So progressive-wise, that's really, really good. And I think, you know, for me, watching him play, He has that ability. In fact, well, let's get his FB ref up now because there's a few things on this, Josh, that I find quite interesting. In terms of, let's see, progressive carries, he's in the 92nd percentile, 1.5 progressive carries a game. And his progressive passes in the 83rd percentile at 4.74. So progressing the football is not an issue to him. Do you remember that goal he scored? Was it earlier on this season where he dribbled it from the halfway line, Josh, and then bent one in from the edge of the penalty area?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hell of a goal. He scored a goal against Manchester United as well, am I right in saying, didn't he? A header against Manchester United at some point.
I think he's got 2 for the season, like, so.
Oh, that might be them.
That must be the other one then, yeah. And he's got 1 assist as well. But yeah, I mean, I suppose typically Spanish in that sense, you know, really good on the ball. The carrying is becoming more important with centre-halves, with the whole kind of baiting the press thing. If you're
and
the
he'd
free
beat a man sometimes to do it, won't he?
Yeah. If you're willing to be brave enough on the ball, where you'll carry it. Again, we've just mentioned Kwanzaa there. Kwanzaa's shown an ability a desire to at least attempt to do it. But without maybe the know-how exactly of how to apply it properly, whereas Huijsen's shown, I'd say, a bit more cute with how he's done it this season.
Do you know one of the things that I absolutely adore from like centre-halves who are maybe moving the ball up forwards, right? I'm just going to throw a football on and I'm going to throw, let's say, a couple of players in as well for this one. I love it when the fullback goes over there. So they move forwards and they go over there, and your defender isn't just playing the safe pass behind them. And whenever I've watched Huijsen, he will like either fizz that round or fizz it in front. Not just the behind safe, oh, your left back's playing the wrong way pass. And it's something that's always frustrated me about Liverpool, some Liverpool players over the course of the last 20 years, is it's such a simple thing to play the ball in front of somebody, and the best passers do that naturally. And I think Huijsen does that a lot.
Well, that a lot of that comes down to the footedness.
Yeah,
a lot of that comes down.
Because a left footer bends it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
And a right footer bends it closer to the man.
Exactly. Like if I'm playing there, that's me. I'm right footed. So if I pass the ball to Robertson there and he's looking this way, facing this way, inwards towards the pitch, I am passing the ball to Robertson's right foot because it's going like here. Whereas if I'm left footed, I'm passing the ball in front of him. Just because that's the angle that I've got. That's just the way the foot works, do you know what I mean? So Guardiola said it a few years back when he signed Laporte, and since then it's been just a growing thing in the Premier League that the left-sided fella has to be left-footed. And Arteta obsessed over it when he first took charge of Arsenal. He got his first signing, I think, was Pablo Mari, left-footer, straight out of Brazil. He gets Kiwior in, he gets Gabriel in. Might be one more. Chelsea have got, you know, a lot of value in Levi Colwill, again left footer. Unai Emery, I think, showed an interest in getting in Pau Torres, left footer. So there's a lot of interest in these kind of players. But if you're Huijsen, one of the reasons he can play these passes so well, regardless of where he is because depending on the scenario, you can just pick a foot, and a lot of players can't do that. So you get a lot of value out of him when it comes to your distribution and things like that. And you don't tend to say that a lot about 20-year-old centre-backs, you know what I mean? It's usually something that comes maybe over time when they get a bit more brave and that, but for him to be doing that now, you know, it shows that he's got a bit of character about him as well.
Absolutely. Now, I've been waiting for this part of the show because I know how disinterested you are in stats when it comes to centre-halves. So, I haven't bothered using FB Ref. I've actually gone on and used Squawker, which I haven't used for years and years. But I do think it's going to visually give us a half-decent look at these three players. So left-hand side is Virgil, middle is Canate, and Huijsen is on that right-hand side. Now, what I find interesting here, Josh, is the long passes attempted and the long passing accuracy. It unfortunately won't bring it up. So I don't know whether I can move that across for you a little bit there. So I like long passes attempted and long pass accuracy, because the accuracy is very, very close to Virgil van Dijk. 56% for Virgil, 38% for Canate, 53%. But he's actually attempting more than Virgil. Now that's Bournemouth, and they like to go mix it up between short passing and long passing, don't they? But his passing accuracy being very close to Virgil van Dijk over a long distance, that's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And again, like going back to it with the footedness thing, he's got the capacity to switch to play in both directions, which is important because you're potentially losing Trent this summer. So you a lot of people have stressed over losing that diagonal that Trent plays all the time. Trent a lot of the time is a bit of an escape route for Liverpool when they're in their own half and they want to get out of it. He came on the other day and picks up the ball here, and one pass we were over here. If you lose Trent, you bring in Bradley. Bradley's a good footballer, but he interprets the role differently. So I've seen a lot of people talking about, like, if you lose Trent, you replace him in the aggregate. This is kind of what we mean when we say that, by kind of getting Trent's qualities, Trent's skills elsewhere in the team. If you get in another centre half who is really good with long passes, both sides, you're kind of almost guarding against what you're losing with Trent's switches in a weird sort of way.
You're absolutely spot on. And going back to the board, I saw this the other day. Liverpool were all sort of over to the left-hand side, and Kostas Tsimikas was there, and I shouted during the watch-along, the three man's on the right-hand side, but Kostas ain't going to play that pass. So what Costa did was he just passed it to Virgil, and Virgil knew exactly where he passed the ball with directions, and you could imagine that Connor would do almost exactly the same, play it in there, get on your bike to join your mate, and the ball goes across. So it mitigates some of those things that you lose, and I think you're absolutely spot on there. In terms of his pure clearances and interceptions, block shots and ball recoveries on Squawka, he beats Van Dijk and Canate on a per 90 basis. Josh, I think it's important to say why.
Well, Bournemouth defend more. Liverpool have got the ball more than Bournemouth have. And that's generally why I'm a little bit sceptical when it comes to defensive numbers, because it's about what you do. It's about events. It's about things that happen. And a lot of defending is about what doesn't happen in a weird sort of way. And the dominant sides naturally have to defend less, so they're doing less. But then if you're counting the number of interceptions that Van Dijk makes versus Conor Cody's going to look better than him because he's asked to do it more. So it's always difficult. A lot of context always lacking in there when it comes to defensive numbers. No,
absolutely. Okay, well let's get back onto his FB ref then and look at the sort of main sort of statistics versus the other centre halves. I mean, we touched on, didn't we already, his progressive passes and his progressive carries. Interesting that he's actually fairly high up in progressive passes received as well for a centre half. And in interceptions, I know, again, defensive stats and all that, what Josh has just said, but he is in the top percentile for interceptions, which, if nothing else, Josh, would suggest he reads the game very well.
Yeah, that'd be my read on it. As I said before, that Bournemouth, really proactive team. It's about getting after the opposition. It's about putting them under pressure and things like that. So a lot of it is about like forcing mistakes. So if Huijsen can kind of read where the ball's going to lie and he can get in ahead, that really suits being a proactive team versus a team that's kind of reactive, sitting behind the ball, keeping the shape. He strikes me more as a front foot player. They're usually good at making interceptions and things like that. So maybe he's one of them. I have just seen something interesting there though. For the season so far for Bournemouth, he's created 14 shots.
Yeah.
For Bournemouth, Dean Huijsen. And just for a quick comparison, I had a look at Kwanzaa for the same metric. Mm-hmm. Kwanzaa this season and last season combined, and there's some fullback in there obviously. Kwanzaa set up a combined total of 4. Huijsen's on 14. So I think that's quite interesting, especially considering Huijsen's technically playing for the worst team. Shows he's got that kind of, like, I don't want to say creative, but relatively speaking, he's got like a bit of a spark to him, a bit of a, you know, an element of stardust there with the distribution, considering he's supposedly a centre half.
Yeah, and that shows up again in the main box, doesn't it? In shot creating actions, he's in the top 5% for shot creating actions, which is exactly what you're sort of talking about there, isn't it? So, in terms of reading into these statistics, although sheer comparison might not tell you exactly how good somebody is, you can pull out some threads that tell you what type of a player they are.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is on that squawker one, his aerial duels one isn't anywhere near up to scratch with Van Dijk. So Van Dijk is 71% aerial duel success, Canate is 70%, and Huijsen is 59.8%. That's quite a big difference, isn't it, really, in the aerial duel stuff?
But to be fair, given this is like the deep dive and all that, it's not supposed to be all sunshine and rainbows. Every player will have weaknesses, and the aerial stuff is interesting when it comes to him, because Bournemouth, we know, are a high pressing team. A lot of sides, as a means of getting around that, will hit long. So he probably has dealt with a fair few long balls, Dean Huijsen. It's a very physical league, you know, it's a proper man's league, and he's only just turned 20 years old, so I would assume it'd improve with time. But I suppose that's one, I don't want to say red flag, it's like a small risk. Signing a centre-half for Liverpool who is not aerially dominant is just not ideal. You know, just because of how Liverpool play, and maybe it'll change a little bit under Arne Slot versus what we saw under Klopp. Mm-hmm. But that's a skill that you generally value quite highly. So, be interesting to see if it improves. Be interesting to see if Liverpool care. Could be a Bournemouth thing. Could be, you know, a team setup thing or something. But something to keep an eye on. Yeah,
and I just thought, for comparison, I wonder what 22-year-old Ibu Konate was doing, and in terms of aerial duels for Liverpool, he was 64%. Then he went up 76%, then down 71%, and now he's around 71%. So Ibu still higher than what Huijsen's is right now, but showed that you can improve the more you get used to a league. And this is his first season in the Premier League. Obviously, we know there's that £50 million release clause, which is probably why we're talking about him right now. But I think from everybody that I've spoken to, Liverpool are very much interested in Huijsen, and this was from a few weeks ago. I remember turning around to you off camera once and saying, Huijsen, real deal, we've heard. And now it's interesting to see the Romanos and the David Lynches and all this type of stuff talking about it over and over. So I think it's really good, and it shows that he's a modern centre-half as well. I think what we've showcased today, isn't it, that this is a lad who, you know, has played at Juventus, Roma as well, I think was the other side that he's played for. So he's played for some big clubs already. Coming at Bournemouth, done incredibly well in his debut Premier League season, and maybe ready to step up. Yeah, I think I'm right in saying as well, he speaks the language as well, doesn't he? He speaks English and things like that. I don't know, actually. Lots of room to develop, but as what we've seen this season as a base is just really high. And I think 50 million, I think I don't want to say it's a snip, but like, he's going to pay you back with that. And he's got I don't want to forecast future sales, because you should never want that if you're Liverpool, if you're managing Liverpool or whatever. But if one day he does go to Real Madrid or something, and it's for a fee, he'll be worth more than that. You know what I mean? Because as you say, he's a really modern centre half. He's got a lot of things on his side. Good on the ball, good height, reads the game really well. 2-footed, can switch to play both sides. Relatively creative, as we just touched on. Can improve early, but helps that he's 6'5". Yeah. So, yeah, lots to like with this player. Okay, and one final thing that I've got prepared over on StatHead this time, which uses all the FBref data points, I decided to bring up players that are his age, up to his age, essentially, with a minimum of 2090s played in Europe's top 5 leagues. Now, in terms of progressive passes, aerial duels, I set aerial duels at 50%. Tackles and interceptions are set to 1 a game. Clearances are set to 1 a game. Passes completed are set to 40 for someone who at least passes the ball a little bit. Now, in terms of that, it brought up 5 players. Barcelona's prospect, Pau Kubasi. Brilliant. Mamadou Sarr, Dean Huijsen, Pietro Camuso at Fiorentina, and Koulourakis for Wolfsburg. Now, in terms of completion percentage per 90, completed passes, per 90, middle of the road. In terms of progressive passes, the second highest, obviously Barcelona's centre-half wonder kid there, is number one. In terms of tackles and interceptions, again, can't really relate too much to, but he's number one. Aerial dual win percentage, middle of the pack. Clearances per 90, by far and away the best. So there are only a few people who are playing this amount of football in Europe's top 5 leagues that are on like this pedestal, I suppose, and Dean Huijsen is one of them. And one of them is an absolute wonder kid playing for Barcelona.
Yeah, well, this is the kind of thing that you realise. Like, a few weeks ago, I just filtered the whole of Europe. Players under the age of 21, or 20 it might have even been. And I just filtered them by who's played the most minutes. And it's often as easy as that, just to pick out the wonder kids. Like, Lenny Yoro, for example, had just played loads of minutes for Lille, I think it was, at the age of like 18 or something. It's because he's really good. Matthias de Ligt, with Ajax, it is a case sometimes of the kids who were really good, really got lots of potential and all that, just start getting games immediately. Yeah, it's as simple as that. And Huijsen's one of them who shows up, but he's a bit more known because he's playing in the Premier League.
So I suppose the final question to ask you: are we buying, if we buy him, Van Dijk's long-term successor, but with the ability to use him now? Because I think with Mo, as an example, where'd you play Mo's long-term successor? It feels like with Huijsen, you get to play Van Dijk's potential long-term successor without having to bench Van Dijk.
Yeah, well, that's always been the problem. The problem is, who do you sign, who in theory is going to be good enough to replace Virgil, but despite being that level, is willing to just play virtually domestic cups, and that's kind of it, because Virgil's always on the pitch. So Huijsen, to get minutes elsewhere, different spots in the centre half, would allow him to get minutes, and I think he probably is the long-term successor. If we sign him, I think given that he's two-footed, I think that's enough of a tick in the left-footed box. He's got everything that you need, really. Really good player and things like that. Virgil, we've got 2 years to replace. So yeah, I think I would look at that as being the long-term successor thing, and that's what you want, really. You don't want to replace Virgil in the summer that he goes. You want that succession plan. You want that, like, getting to grips with it over time and things like that. And in theory, by the time he's 22 and he's been in the country for 3 years, at that point maybe Virgil passes the baton type thing, and Huijsen's had a really steady integration where it's not a sudden spotlight, which is what we see so often. It's a gradual thing.
And then the other thing there is as well, he could quite conceivably come in like he's done at Bournemouth, where he didn't start the season playing and take it and capitalise on an injury, and stay in the side. And so you're absolutely right. He could have the minutes under his belt. It's
worth saying as well with Konaté's contract.
Yeah,
like, even if Virgil extends in 2 years' time, which I wouldn't even rule out, Konaté's future's uncertain.
Because now's the summer to sell him, isn't it?
Yeah, there's interest in Kwanzaa. Gomez is 27, 28. He can't be counted on as a contingency plan for Konaté or Van Dijk. So it's almost like, if you say to Huijsen, you're virtually guaranteed to be a starter in the next 2 years. We just don't know which spot it'll be yet. Do you know what I mean? But the perk is he can do either anyway. So if Konaté ends up leaving, Virgil stays and extends, he plays there. If Virgil leaves, Huijsen plays the left side, and you open up the market for a right footer.
It's just much easier to sign.
Exactly, there's 75% of players are right footed, so it's a much bigger market. So just it makes a lot of sense if we can get this one over the line.
One thing on the price then, 50 million, is that recoverable if it doesn't work out?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's, given his age, he's going to be Premier League proven regardless. I think if you say it doesn't work out as well, what does the floor look like? I don't think it has the potential to be a disaster. I can only see it being a success anyway. To be honest, I just don't. He doesn't look like the kind of player who would flop to me. Looks really good at everything you need to be good at to be a dominant centre half for the top side, except the aerial stuff, which could come with age. So yeah, I have 50 million for a going rate on it nowadays. Arsenal paid that a few years back for Ben White.
Yeah. And just to wrap up then, a comment from the comment section, Ian NG says, physicality is easier to improve than football-specific skills.
Physicality is easier to improve. Yeah, well, at the same time, though, if you're born 6'5", you've also just got that on your side anyway. Do you know what I mean? So if we can bulk him up, certainly. Absolutely. But the height he's already got, thankfully, and speed-wise, actually might have to do some homework on that.
He looks quick over the ground.
Does he?
Yeah.
Good.
To me. Doesn't look slow. Certainly not. Quite graceful in his stride, actually.
Spanish mate.
Yeah,
always
absolutely.
The case.
So, okay, there we go. We're going to head off to Redmen Plus. We'll be on Redmen Plus in about 15 minutes. Where we'll be discussing Liverpool's fullback core, I suppose. Josh found some interesting stuff out around the fullback, so we'll be discussing both the right and left fullback cores with a view to players potentially leaving and what it is Liverpool need to do in the transfer market. So you can either join up as a Redmen Plus video subscription tier member on YouTube, or the cheaper way, join up on redmenplus.com. Use the code DEEP and that will get you, Joe, is it a free month? It's either, hang on a minute, it's either a free month on a Captain monthly subscription or 50% off your yearly subscription on a yearly subscription. Try both. The code's DEEP. See you next time. Ta-ra.